the shrunken head. I didn't even go to the funeral. We were never close. My grandfather was a strange man. Rich, yes, but miserly. Eccentric in the most inconvenient ways. He travelled constantly, collected all sorts of junk, and always kept his estate locked up like a fortress. Growing up, I remember him as a stiff old bastard who hated noise, hated questions, and hated being touched. So when the lawyer called and told me I'd inherited something, I expected the worst, and I was right. No money, no land, no hidden accounts, just furniture. Select personal effects, the lawyer had said, like he was handing me sacred heirlooms. In reality, it was 2 wardrobes, 3 cupboards, a heavy coffee table, and a red armchair with ornate carvings, all delivered to my house, all old, all dusty. At first I was pissed, but then I noticed the craftsmanship. The wardrobes were solid oak, polished and engraved. The cupboards looked handmade, not factory. That coffee table was at least 100 years old. My grandfather might have been a lunatic, but he had taste. I called Greg, a friend of mine who runs a pawn shop in the city. He owed me a favor or two, and I figured he could appraise the pieces or help me offload them. He came by 2 days later, took one look at the collection, and started grinning like a kid in a candy store. "You've got good stuff here, man," he said, knocking on the wardrobe side. "This is antique grade. I can get you $5,000, maybe more." I nodded, already imagining the weekend trip I'd take with the money, maybe even a new mattress. "What about that one?" Greg asked, pointing at the red armchair. I blinked. "I'll keep that one." He laughed. "What are you, sentimental now?" I didn't answer. I had no particular reason not to sell it, but I felt an urge to keep it. I couldn't really explain why. Greg loaded the rest into his truck and left. That night, I sat in the red chair, glass of wine in hand, admiring the emptier living room. I stared at the chair, deep burgundy velvet, elegant wooden arms, clawed feet. It had a strange pull to it, not warm exactly, but not cold either. Just there, still. It felt wrong to sell it. Maybe I was being sentimental. Maybe I just didn't want to admit that part of me hoped for more. A secret vault, a letter, a final revelation from the crazy old coot. Instead, I got a chair. But it was mine now, and I told myself I'd get used to it, even if I couldn't stop looking at it, or stop thinking about it. The nightmares began 3 days later. Nothing elaborate, just the armchair, always the armchair. I'd find myself standing in front of it in a dark, featureless room. No walls, no ceiling, just the chair, lit from above by a spotlight that didn't seem to come from anywhere. I'd stare at it, and something in my chest would tighten, like I was about to cry, or scream, or run, but couldn't. It never moved, it never changed, but I woke up soaked in sweat every single time. I told myself it was stress, that it was residual guilt from how I'd treated my grandfather. Or maybe my subconscious was reacting to how quickly I'd tried to turn his death into cash. But those were the lies we tell ourselves to get through the day. I didn't believe a word of it. Every time I passed by the chair in my living room, I'd feel something, a pressure, as if the space around it was just slightly heavier. The lights always seemed dimmer in that corner, and if I stared too long, I swore I could see it shift. Not the chair itself, but the shadows around it, like something waiting just behind the fabric. The worst came 2 nights later. I woke up in total stillness, but I wasn't in bed. I was in the armchair, sitting upright, eyes wide open, completely frozen. I tried to speak, tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. My heart pounded in my chest, but my limbs were stone. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. It was like being buried alive in my own skin. Sleep paralysis, I told myself. I'd had it before, years ago. It wasn't new. But this was worse. Because I could feel something beneath me, moving, shifting, breathing. It took everything I had to jerk forward. I tumbled off the chair and hit the floor with a painful thud. My body returned to me in pieces, fingers, then arms, then legs. I lay there for a long time, staring up at the ceiling fan, whispering to myself, it's nothing. It's just sleep paralysis, just a dream. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I took the armchair into the backyard. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I just dragged it across the grass and laid it down under the moonlight. I grabbed a shovel from the shed and started swinging. The velvet tore open first, then the wood splintered. It cracked like bone. Stuffing exploded into the air like dust. I kicked it, stomped it, destroyed it. And then something fell out. A small lump, heavy. I picked it up. It was a head, no bigger than a plum, skin like dried leather, mouth and eyes crudely sewn shut, long black hair tied behind it in a thick braid. It was warm in my hand, as if it had just been made. The next morning, I drove into town with the head wrapped tightly in an old t-shirt, tucked inside a cloth shopping bag. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and I kept checking the passenger seat, making sure the bag hadn't moved. It felt like it had. Greg was just opening up when I arrived at the pawn shop. The bell jingled overhead as I pushed the door open. He looked up from the counter and gave me a curious grin. Back already? What? Decide to part with that chair after all? I broke it, I muttered, placing the bag on the counter. Smashed it to pieces. Greg raised an eyebrow. Damn, that's aggressive even for you. I didn't answer. Just opened the bag and let the contents roll out gently onto the glass display case. Greg's grin faded instantly. Jesus, he whispered. The little head sat there perfectly still, its eyelids sewn shut, mouth cinched closed with dark thread. The skin was leathery, dark and dried, not decayed, not rotted, preserved. I found it inside the chair, I said, after I broke it apart. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at it, then slowly reached for a magnifying glass under the counter. This is a tsansa, he said finally, a shrunken head. Shoa or Aqua tribes from the Amazon basin, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia. He spoke slowly, like he was reading from an old book. They made these not as trophies, but as a way to trap the spirit of their enemies, the muisak, the avenging soul. The process was intense. They'd remove the skull, shrink the skin, sew the features closed, and keep it as part of a ritual, a powerful ritual. I didn't respond. He lowered the magnifying glass and tilted his head. But this one's strange. What do you mean? Well, for starters, there are no piercings in the nose or ears. That's standard with authentic tsansas. They'd run wooden pegs or cords through them to lock in the spirit. And the stitching, it looks like natural fiber, like hemp or jute, but it's too refined, too modern. He leaned closer. And the face, that doesn't look like an indigenous face to me. The bone structure, it's more Caucasian. I felt my stomach twist. Greg stood up straight. Look, I don't deal in human remains, especially ones like this. I can make a call. There are collectors out there, weirdos. You could get a decent price. I shook my head. No, that's not why I came. Then why? I didn't answer, just picked up the head, wrapped it again, and slipped it back into the bag. Hey, Greg said as I reached the door. Just be careful, all right? That thing's not a souvenir. I nodded and stepped out into the daylight. The sky was overcast. The air smelled like rain. The bag felt heavier than it had before. The rain started halfway home. Fine at first, mist on the windshield, drops tapping gently on the roof. I didn't mind. The country road was familiar, winding through patches of farmland and woods. I kept the radio off, the only sound the rhythmic whoomp whoomp of the wipers and the occasional squelch of gravel under my tires. The cloth bag with the head sat on the passenger seat beside me. I tried not to look at it. Trophies, I muttered to myself. Rituals. Spirits trapped in skin. My grandfather would have loved that crap. The old bastard was obsessed with the occult. I remembered stories whispered by my mother. Things he brought home from his travels. Books in languages nobody could read. A collection of jars with things inside she never dared describe. He used to say the world was full of things that watch, even when they don't move. Maybe the chair was one of those things. Or maybe he just got carried away, had someone killed, had their head shrunk as a souvenir. Rich men can get away with murder, right? Especially if they keep it quiet and decorated in velvet and oak. I gripped the wheel tighter. The bag shifted as the car turned. I glanced at it again, uneasy. Screw this, I thought. Let the police deal with it. I don't want it. I reached across, opened the glove compartment. The space was tight, barely enough for my hand to shove the bag inside. But as I tilted the bag, the shrunken head slipped out. It bounced once off the seat, rolled downward, and landed between my legs. I looked down, just for a second. That was all it took. A blinding horn, headlights, a massive truck barreling through the intersection. I slammed the brakes, but the world spun. Glass shattered, metal twisted, gravity flipped. When I opened my eyes, everything was upside down. The windshield was gone. The steering wheel was crushed into my chest. I couldn't feel my legs, could barely breathe. I turned my head to the side. The shrunken head was resting there, inches from my face. Blood dripped in slow threads from my hair, mixing with the rain. My vision blurred. And then it moved. Not much. Just the mouth. A small twitch. Then the lips curled upward, stitched and tight, but unmistakable. It smiled.